Chad Foster, you are a blind person, yet that hasn't prevented you from finding success. You are the first blind person to graduate from Harvard Business School leadership program. You climbed the corporate ladder as a successful finance sales executive, and you created a customer relationship software for the visually impaired, which right now is creating hundreds of jobs for blind people. Chad, thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me, Alan.
So, Chad, the one thing that you have is clear vision. You have managed to find your way to success regardless of the circumstances. I wonder if you could just, I started reading your book, what is it? Blind Ambition, how to go from victim to visionary. And you were telling us on how you were studying, and all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, that was gradual, but you just couldn't read anymore. I wonder if you could just take us from there to where you are today, a little bit of your background.
Sure. Yeah. So growing up, I had a fairly normal childhood. I could play sports. I played football and basketball and soccer, and I drove a car and rode a bicycle and jet skis and things like that. I was very active growing up. But as young as 3 years old, my parents noticed where I had a hard time seeing in very dimly lit areas, very dark areas. And so they took me to Duke University, where I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, which that's a genetic eye disease. It's called RP for short. But what they had told me is, yeah, he can see during the day fine, and he has some difficulty at night, but someday he may go blind totally. And that remained with me throughout my life. And it was one of those things that I was aware of intellectually, but I didn't really fully embrace. It's almost like I didn't want to admit it. I was running from it. I was in denial, essentially. And then when I was in college, my eyesight really began to fade. And that's where, at around 19 years old, it really started to go out. And by 23 years old, I was completely blind. And I had to get a medical withdrawal from my major. I was in the medical field. I wanted to go into the medical field to help other people, but all of a sudden I was struck with the realization that I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to help myself because of my blindness.
Right. Okay. And can you tell us about your mindset? I mean, you are a kid who likes to do sports. You got in all kind of trouble because you couldn't see properly, yet that didn't slow you down. And yet at this moment you realize, oh shit, I'm screwed. I really now need to do something with my life. What was going on in your head at that moment?
Well, at that moment when it first happened, it was very difficult for me. I'm very clear today. My vision is very good today. Back then it was not. I was very bitter. I was very angry. I was wondering why this happened to me. Life is unfair. And I did that for about a year or two, and I was really down and out. And I realized that I just couldn't live like that. That was not a way for me to live, because I was perpetually unhappy living in this toxicity of negativity around me. And I just chose to not do that anymore. I realized that I was 20 something years old, and to live the rest of my life like that, over 50 years of my life, if I'm so fortunate, would be a miserable existence. So I just decided that I was going to look at things differently. And thankfully for me, I had an event that happened when I was at Leader Dogs for the Blind. I went to get my first guide dog when I was in college, and I was there in Michigan and met people there who had mental impairments and they were blind. I met people who were on dialysis because they had diabetes that had robbed them of their eyesight. They were blind from that and also going to get dialysis. And there were these two girls there who were deaf and blind. They had never seen nor heard, yet they were getting a guide dog to be independent. And living with these people for 26 days shook me to my foundation. It made me reevaluate my perspective on life. It made me appreciate the blessings that I had. It gave me a newfound perspective on how gratitude really does shape our outlook on life. And so, I had 23 years of eyesight. I had all of my hearing. I had all of my kidney function. I had my cognitive faculties were just fine. So I was very fortunate. And so that was a tipping point for me. I came back and then I started looking at things through a new lens.
Right. Okay. So you spend a year or two feeling sorry for yourself, not knowing what to do with your life, drinking, hanging around with your loser buddies in that house. And many of us, we encounter difficult circumstances and we get stuck there. We don't make that proactive action that will get us out of the rut.
Yeah.
And I wonder what differentiate the people like you who realize, okay, I don't want to spend here in this place the rest of my life, to the people who just stay there and feel sorry not only for a year or two, but for the rest of their life. They think society is not doing enough, the government is not doing enough, and they neglect to look at themselves in the mirror.
I think it gets down to accountability, if I'm being honest with you. I came to the realization that I could sit around and I could make a bunch of excuses. I call them excuses. You could call them reasons. They might even be legitimate reasons. But we could sit and make excuses about why we don't get what we want out of life. Oh, I'm blind. Oh, it's hard. Oh, somebody's not helping me. And those may be legitimate reasons. They may not just be excuses. They may be legitimate reasons. But if they're not helping us get to our goal, then what purpose are they serving? They're not serving a purpose, because you and I, none of us on this planet controls our circumstances. I didn't choose how I was born, where I was born, my eyesight, none of that. Neither did you. But you and me, we have to be accountable for our life and its outcomes. And if we're not, who is? And if we don't get what we want out of life because of some legitimate reason, like I'm blind and I'm 70 years old and I look back, am I going to be any happier because I had a legitimate reason to fail? No. Hell no. I'm not going to be any happier. I'm going to still be bitter. I'm still going to be disappointed. So we can spend all of our energy creating excuses, or we can force that energy into taking action.
Wow. Okay. So accountability is your answer, and I wonder, how do we gain some of that accountability? Yes, we don't want to spend all our time just feeling sorry for ourselves, and I admire the work that you have been doing. You just couldn't take it anymore, and I think you had to go through that period of 2 years of feeling bad about
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had to become accountable either to ourselves or to somebody else. Maybe we have a family, maybe we have parents to help out. So how
Mm-hmm.
do we find that accountability?
Well, it's how badly do you want something?
Mm.
Do you want something badly enough to get up early? Do you get up at, I get up at 5 a.m. to start my day because I want to work out. I want to work out at 5 a.m. every day. So I get up at 5 a.m. and I go to bed. I work, my wife will tell you I work way too much. But it's because what I want out of life, I want it more than I want to watch TV or sit around or make excuses or whatever. There are certain things that I want, and all of us want things out of life. If you don't want them badly enough to work until you can't work, until you collapse, right? To put in the amount of effort to figure out, like, for example, me, I had to relearn how to learn when I was in college because I was a visual learner and I went blind. I had to develop a new system for learning. And then after I decided that I was going to have to read my books on tape and then record my professor's lectures, I listened to the book twice, I listened to the lecture twice, and then I would go over my notes. I had a note taker who took notes for me, and I ended up making straight A's after that. I was a better blind student than I was a sighted student. It's because I wanted it more. I just wanted it more. And then I got out of college and I went to work for a top consulting company. I had to learn how to engineer software just to be able to do my job, to submit my timesheets. I had to learn how to engineer my software with my eyes closed. I had to learn how to write code without being able to see the screen. I was not a computer person, but I wanted it badly enough. The amount of desire I had to be successful was greater than my discomfort of having to learn something like that, right? I was willing to tolerate the work more than I was willing to tolerate not getting to my goal. And so that's true I think for all of us, it's a matter of how badly do you want it? Are you willing to put in the work? And if you're not, whatever it is, you're probably not going to get there. You're relying on serendipity, and, hope is not a plan, right? It requires a lot of effort and focus and determination. And my blindness gave me all of those things. I had to work harder. I had to be more focused. I needed to have a better perspective. And so it cultivated a relentless drive inside of me to where I just refused to be denied what I wanted out of life, because I started telling myself better stories about my blindness. And this is a really important thing that everybody needs to hear, really, is how do we tell ourselves stories about our situation? The way we narrate a situation to ourselves is far more important than the situation alone. And so for me, for example, I could choose to tell myself that I went blind because I have really bad luck. Or I could choose to tell myself that I went blind because I'm one of the few people on the planet with the strength and the toughness to overcome it and help other people. Now, technically, both of those stories are correct. One of those stories, the poor me story, sets me up to be a victim. And all it's going to do is keep me trapped. It's going to be like an anchor weight on me. The second story frames my disability, my blindness, as a strength. It says I went blind because I'm one of the few people who are strong enough to deal with it and help other people with it. That then turns my disability into my advantage because I'm strong. I can deal with it. I'm mentally tough and I can help people with it. So the way that we choose to attach meaning to things in our lives allows us to either power forward or it's going to hold us back.
Right. Reading your book and listening to you, I realized that we have something in common. Me too. I learned and passed my university classes by listening to tapes. And the thing is that I came to Canada as an international student, so I was not allowed to work, but I didn't have any money, so I had to work. So I record my classes during the day, and then at night I was working as a janitor, cleaning toilets and vacuuming office building and re-listening to my classes at the same time. I used to have a Walkman because we didn't have iPhones at that time. And that was my story time. While I was cleaning toilets and cleaning windows, I was redoing my classes to the tapes that I used to record during the day. So yeah, we have that.
It's ingenious. You wanted it badly enough. You found a new way to get your information. You studied while you worked. That's fantastic.
Well, I mean, we had to find a solution whenever we encounter difficulty.
Well, that was me, and I wanted it badly enough, and so did you. And if you want anything badly enough out of life, you can have it. You just have to want it badly enough. That's the first step.
Well, there's another part in your book when you went for a job interview and the person who was interviewing was asking you if you were sure you could handle that. And you say, well, this stuff is so easy. I can do it with my eyes closed. And that, that's funny, but also it requires a certain self-confidence and bravado. And this is another thing that many people who have all their faculties and all the advantages, that yet they don't have that self-confidence or that allure that, yes, I can face this problem. So I wonder if how people can also learn to have this self-confidence.
I think it's by taking on increasingly more difficult tasks, but starting small, and it really does begin with action. But I think you start small and demonstrate to yourself that you, whatever it is. So, for example, I went skiing last week in Aspen, Colorado, and a month ago we were in Park City. And I've been skiing now for 7 years. I started skiing after I went blind. And a lot of people would say, wow, that's terrifying. Why would you do that? Well, I didn't start off on the steepest part of the mountain, right? I started off by demonstrating to myself that, okay, I can get the bindings on and I can ski down a little green or a bunny slope, whatever it is. And as I started to demonstrate to myself that I had the capability of learning, and it wasn't easy. I fell hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, but I wanted to learn how to ski more than I wanted to avoid falling. But when you start teaching your brain that you mean business, and you start taking on increasingly more difficult tasks. For me, it was, more difficult mountains that I'm skiing. Last year I skied a double black diamond, and this year we skied lots of blacks, and we skied a terrain that was close to a double black. You don't start off on that to begin with, but you have to demonstrate, number one, I'm willing to take action. And number two, I'm going to start small enough to where the consequences aren't so great that it's going to deter me. So you start off on the bunny slope. You start off on something where if you fall, it's not going to be too catastrophic. But you do have to demonstrate to yourself that you can do it. And then, so with action, and then number two is controlling the narrative in your mind, right? We all have those voices in our head that say, oh, you can't do this. Oh, you're in over your head. This is too much for you. And that's natural, right? Everybody has those voices. Which voice do you give the floor to? Which one do you allow to dominate? The one that says, you don't stand a chance, or the one that says, hey man, I've got this. I'm gonna make blind look good, right? Which one are you going to give the floor to? You've got to learn to turn the volume up on the voices that carry you forward and turn the volume down on the voices that hold you back.
Well, okay, Shad, the thing that amazed me, well, you succeeded in spite of your circumstances. And in my mind, success is not so difficult. There are so many things that are keeping us down, all kind of addictions, for example, and all kind of unproductive actions. Like at one time, you used to just drink beer with your buddies, and that was keeping you down. And I feel like a lot of people just go by default into these kind of activities, getting drunk, getting high, eating junk food, just not working that extra hour, or that not studying that extra hour. So the things that people will have to do to succeed are not that huge. Yet, we live in a country where people are struggling. They are struggling to get that $15 an hour job, that union job that will guarantee them something. I wonder why more people are not working just a little bit harder.
It's a good question. Because, look, if you just get 1% better every week, you're going to get 50% better in a year. It doesn't have to be huge leaps, right? You don't have to work that much harder on a given day. Say you work, I don't know how many hours you work. I know the traditional is 8 hours. I don't know what an 8-hour workday is, though. I usually work more like 12 to 14 hours a day between all the different things that I do. But let's just say you work 9 hours a day. If you were to just put in another hour every day, and it could be with your job, could be with going to school, could be with whatever new, maybe there's something else that you're dreaming of doing. Maybe it's writing a book. Maybe it's, I don't know,
It could
any
be
number
by
of
not
things.
getting drunk every night.
That's just it. Well, and it's not even, you don't even have to, it doesn't have to be, I'm going to set aside 3 hours every night. It could just be, hey, you know what? Let me, instead of watching TV for whatever it is, or drinking beer for how long we do, maybe, I'll wait to start watching TV, or maybe I'll just watch TV on these days. You know what? I don't even really watch TV. I during football season, I'm a huge football fan, so I do watch football on Saturday, Sunday, Monday night, and Thursday night. I make time for that. That's really all I watch on TV. I don't watch any, I like a good movie every now and then, but I'm really not, a TV person. Some people, that's just like you said, their default. They default to that. It's easy. They sit on the couch and they would rather do that. I would rather do something that feeds me, because watching TV doesn't feed me. But you know what? When you do something, when you accomplish something that you didn't think that you could, when you take on something and you push yourself farther than you thought, it feels good. It feels a hell of a lot better than drinking a lot of beer or, watching a TV series, right? That feeling of accomplishment that, I did something really challenging and difficult, and I had the mental discipline to do it. Getting up every morning at 5 a.m. to work out, to be honest with you, I do it for me, but I get a buzz just knowing that I have the discipline to get up when most people don't want to get out of bed. It feels good.
Chad, what motivated you to write this book? I mean, you have a busy life. Your skin down slope. You are writing code, and you setting an example for people around you. What made you decide that you had to sit down and write this book?
Well, I was at HBS, Harvard Business School, several years back, and I was elected as the graduating speaker there. And before that happened, I was in a class with Bill George, who is a senior fellow there, and he's the author of Discover Your True North, and he's also the former CEO of Medtronic. And when I was studying in that class, it's all about finding your true north in life. What is it that you want to do? What's your purpose? And it occurred to me that, a lot of people had told me that I was inspiring throughout the course of my life when I wasn't really trying to do anything, but I'd never really taken them seriously. And so I really was contemplating what it is that I could do to help other people. And then, as fate or destiny would have it, I was elected as the graduating speaker. I shared my story for the first time. I tried to be intentional about using my message and my story to help other people at that graduation talk. And I saw firsthand how powerfully I could help people if I were to try. Several people told me that I should be a professional speaker. Well, I've since began giving professional motivational talks, right? That's part of what I do now. I also give motivational presentations. The other thing is I started to really reflect, what else can I do? How can I help people in a way so that I can pass along the lessons that I've learned without people having to go blind? And so while I get on stage and I may talk to 1,000 or 2,000 people, in a book, I can reach so many more people at a given time. So that's really, that was the catalyst for Blind Ambition, the book. And it's really just an attempt for me to try and capture what I've learned over the course of my, I would say, rather unique journey so that I can help other people overcome the twists and turns that life throws at us all.
And do you have any testimonials or examples of how someone has been inspired by your story?
Oh, yeah. So one guy, just as an example, who was in my class at Harvard Business School, decided to commission an opera after I gave that graduation talk, inspired by my life story. So he was so affected by the words that I used, he said he literally heard music, and he decided to commission an opera that's currently in process. It's being set back a little bit because of COVID and what that's done to the economy, but he's commissioning an opera. I've got lots of testimonials on my website too, where people have told me how it's affected them when I've given a talk. I've got, there are reviews on my Amazon page for the book where people are, telling me just how much it's helped them and has affected them. And so that's why I do what I do, right? I'm sharing because it wasn't really comfortable for me to share. I'm not a real open, warm kind of, it's just not who I am, right? To share all the details. But when I started seeing how much it was helping people, and then my editor and publishing team told me, look, in the book, the more vulnerable you can be, the more personal you make it, the more you will help people, the more it will connect with people. And that's what I'm finding. So I'm learning, on my own journey, how to be more vulnerable and share in a very honest way how I felt and what I went through and how difficult it was and what my struggle was like, because that's real. I didn't just come out the other side. I didn't go blind and then walk out and go, oh, yep, I'm better. No, it was hard. It was really hard. And that's what I detail in the book. And that's what I talk about when I'm on stage is some of those struggles, because that's real and that's raw. But at the same time, that's what allows me to connect with people. And the messages that I have and the lessons that I've learned are far more meaningful.
Okay. And the last question, how can you explain the process of writing a book while being blind? I mean, as a person who can see, I type and then I go and read it and edit, and then I reread things and I edit again. But what was your process?
Yeah, so I use a regular computer speech output, and then I use earphones when I'm using a computer, and so it tells me what I'm writing. But essentially, what I did was, we'd start and write down. We'd start with the outline, and then get into each chapter. So we had a rough outline, and then went into the chapter, did it chapter by chapter. And we probably wrote each chapter, I don't know, 15 times, I would say, at a minimum. You write it, you go back, you rewrite it, I'd say between me and the editor, we probably went at it probably 8 to 12 times per chapter for the entire book. And then we would send it to another person to review, and then they would send it back to us, and then we would re-edit it, and then it would go, and then it went to the publisher, and then after it went to the publisher, it would come back, and then I'd edit it some more. And then after we got that done, then at the end of it, it went to someone else who needed to go in and do the typesetting and images and all of these things that you don't really think about the process of writing the book. It's very intricate, and it's really time consuming as well. It was very rewarding though, if I'm being honest. It was a bit cathartic, just to be able to get all of that out on paper and see like, wow, okay. I didn't know that I had that much in me. When I first took it on, it's like, wow, I've got to come up with 55,000 words. And then when I started writing, it's like, wow, I could probably do, 255,000 words. So it was really about getting it, down to having the right stories, telling the right stories in the right way so that people want to keep turning the pages to learn those lessons.
Well, I can tell you, it's extremely inspiring, and I can tell my listeners there's a free chapter in your website. So if they are skeptic, I encourage my listeners to go out and check out the free chapter. It's very enticing. I did enjoy it very much. I wonder if you could just tell us one more time the title of your book and where can people follow you?
Sure. So the name of the book is Blind Ambition: How to Go from Victim to Visionary. They can find me on my website at chadefoster.com. They can find the book. Well, it's on my website. I have another book website through the publisher, HarperCollins. That website is blindambitionbook.com. The book itself is pretty much anywhere you can buy books. It's on Amazon. It's at Barnes & Noble. It's at Apple Books, Bookshop, Books A Million, et cetera, et cetera. It's pretty much anywhere you can get a book. And all of those links are on my website and the book website. And then obviously there are my social media handles on my website as well. And I'm at Facebook and Instagram at Find Chad E. Foster. My Twitter is Chad E. Foster. I've got articles on my website. I've got videos on my website, speaking videos. We've got videos on my YouTube channel, which all of that you can get to just by going to my website. You can click right through and find all that.
I believe there's a video of you skiing, right?
Yeah, there is. It's a hobby of mine, believe it or not. It's amazing. It's one of the most thrilling sports I've ever done. In fact, it is. And I think it might even be boring if I could see where I was going.
Chad, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Alan.